Good morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to this morning's webinar. I can see there's a few more people joining us, so I'll keep speaking and sort of in feeling just while more people joining us. So a very warm welcome to whichever part of Scotland that you're joining us from. My name is Brian and I'm the Development Manager with Hourglass Scotland, and I'll talk about that in a second. As I say, a very warm welcome. I'm in Kinross. It's a wee bit sort of cold here today. We've had snow, it's a bit frosty. I actually understand we may have someone joining us from the United States, so very warm welcome to you. I'm sure it's not cold and frosty where you are, and I think someone from Wales may also be joining us, but I think the rest of us are all from Scotland, so very warm welcome to you all. I hope you'll enjoy this next session. This morning's webinar will last approximately 1 hour. It may finish a bit earlier or it may just go over, but we'll try and stick with that hour time. Thank you very much for anyone that submitted questions beforehand. I've got a note of those and we'll make sure that we come to those. But if during the course of the presentation you've got any questions at all, please just put it in the Q&A or the chat session. Our presenters may or may not be able to answer them on the spot, but if not, then I'll make sure they are covered. So please don't worry if you're worried that we're not answering your question. I'll make sure they do get covered through the course of the presentation. Just before I hand over to our presenters, just to sort of say that Hourglass is the organisation that was previously known as Action on Elder Abuse. We have a presence in all of the 4 nations, and we've been going in the UK since about 1993. So we're an organisation even here to try and prevent and reduce the risk of harm to older people specifically, and that is our remit within that kind of side of things. So I can still see the numbers are going up, so I might have to carry on talking a little bit more because I don't want to sort of miss out on anybody. So just to say that we're producing this is our 4th webinar this week, or was it my 5th? I'm losing track. And it's all part of Safer Aging Week, and that started on Monday, and it runs for 7 days, as the name implies. And it's very much sort of giving organisations and people an opportunity to showcase what they do. And I'm very much looking forward to our presentation today. And it'll be the chance for people to look at ways of trying to keep older people safe, and that's very much the focus of our organisation. You may have seen in the recent media on Sunday, I think it was in one of the Sunday papers, our organisation had an article about how shocking the prevalence of elderly people in the UK. They reckon that about 1 in 5 older people are at risk of abuse, which is quite shocking, and that equates to about 2.7 million across the whole of the UK. So I'm sure you agree that's pretty bad. But anyway, I think that's probably most people joining us now. So, and I know you don't really want to hear me talking. So I'll now hand over to our presenters. Absolutely delighted to welcome Shona and Rona, who will be giving their presentation. They'll introduce themselves. As I say, if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments box. I'll pick them up. But otherwise, I'll be disappearing for now. You may be glad to know. And I'll be handing over to our presenters. So thank you very much. And I'll hand over to our presenters. So thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome to our presentation today. Shona and myself are going to give you an insight into our jobs as occupational therapists in the area we work in. My name is Rona Bissell. I'm an occupational therapist in a community mental health team for older people in Dundee. And
I'm Shona Crabb, an occupational therapist in rehabilitation, also in Dundee.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Sorry, guys, I'm in trouble with the laptop. Oh. I'll try another way. Sorry about this. There we go. Sorry about that.
That's us. Yep. So, what is an occupational therapist? Occupational therapists are qualified health professionals who aim to enable people to live a more independent, productive and enjoyable life following an injury, disability or illness. Next slide, please.
So our core purpose is to enable, to improve or enhance function and to empower people to their maximum functional level through ability or maybe provision of equipment required. And we'll explain what we mean by activity daily living as we go through this. Next slide, please.
So what do we consider as occupation? It's the tasks, jobs and skills that we need to do in everyday life, or as occupational therapists call them, activities of daily living. These are personal tasks such as washing and showering and dressing, household tasks such as meal preparation and cleaning, hobbies such as walking and gardening, and work, so that's paid and unpaid work, for example, volunteering. Next slide, please.
So where as occupational therapists do we work? We work with all ages, from birth up to death. Obviously today we're going to be talking about, but we can work in people's houses. They may just work, but maybe we're hospital or in a clinic. We've even covered prison, a prison locally that we've had, and other community settings. Next slide, please.
As occupational therapists, we talk about well-being. Well-being, we look to improve an individual's psychological and physical well-being. We accept that people have limitations, looking to maximise an individual's independence within the parameters of their abilities. Next slide, please.
So sometimes it's perceived difficult to explain what our role is, where we work. So hopefully throughout today you'll get an idea of the areas, aspects of our work. When we're working with someone, it's our job to find out what's important to that individual, and then we can work out then what is the best way. So what we do is what you want to be able to do. There's no point working on a skill that's not going to be of benefit. So we work on your that you will be doing yourself. Can we maybe have the next slide, please? And the next one again.
Just to say, Shona, we seem to be having a bit of trouble with your audio. I don't know whether there's anything that you can do your side at all, but just a few people.
I'll just try and see if is that any better?
Ah, that's better. Yes, thank you very much.
Right. So some examples of how we help. You can go into your house and look at your home environment with a view to improving your safety. And by that, we're meaning maybe looking at the layout. You're looking at if you need a code upstairs or downstairs, but it might be more simple about identifying it could be a loose rug, it could be a carpet, it could be your door threshold. Just stop that extra high that you can't close on. Things are risks for your own safety. And we would look at your access and within that building. So your stairs side and inside, and generally how you move around within the house. Other aspects of safety within the house, do you sleep in a room that has a fire? And we would be recommending carbon. So we look at a fire, and possibly what you need is a period of rehabilitation to help you do your task. You've maybe had a fracture and your arm's not able to work the way it did before, and we'll work while your arm heals, and then we'll be able to help you do things to maintain your skills and while fractures healing. Afterwards, if your arm's weak, then work on or action and take it there. But we also assess or provide some equipment and possibly some applications. So equipment could be everything from something to go on the bed, something to help you within the kitchen. An adaptation is that's to the wall, such as a grab rail. So there's a variety of things we can look at within the home.
Sorry, Shona, I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but we're getting a lot of echo. I don't know whether you've got another device on or it's kind of...
Oh, there's another device on here, I'm afraid.
It's repeating and echoing very back. We can't actually pick up on a lot of what you're saying. I don't know whether... When you moved it, it did improve things for a second. I don't know if that made a...
Yeah, is that any better?
Yes, that improves things like that, yeah.
Right, it was just next to a socket, so maybe that was something to do with that.
Thank you. That's much better. Thank you, Shona. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right. Can we have the next slide, please?
So through assessment of an individual's functioning, so that's how we manage to do tasks, everyday tasks, we consider what you as an individual can do and what you have more difficulty doing. As we said earlier, we work together on what is important to you. And we also set goals, jointly set goals towards achieving or regaining a skill. Next slide, please. So we consider somebody's medical condition. For example, Shona and myself work with a variety of conditions: depression, anxiety, people have had a stroke, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's disease. We contribute to the diagnostic process. So, for example, as an occupational therapist within the community mental health team for older people, I'm often asked to see how somebody is managing on a day-to-day basis to carry out their activities of daily living with a view to contributing towards the diagnosis that a consultant may make. We engage people in meaningful and purposeful activities. And where possible, we aim for self-management. Next slide, please.
Well, some more examples of how we can help. We can look at your home layout and make sure it's safe and advise on any issues. So that might be everything from whether you need locks on your drawers and your cupboards. We look for any tripping hazards. We look for general clutter, and if it can be organised differently, can we improve your circulation space within a room? And we would look at things like your door thresholds, as we had said earlier. But maybe things like if we're putting in a raised toilet seat that has a frame attached to it, that obviously we would want ideally to fit to the best height for yourself. But where there are others within your household, and we've got to consider them. And an example would be where one member of the family is short and another one is very, very tall. And we've got to make sure that the equipment will enable both people and not disable one while fixing the other person's problem. We might also be doing things like offering referral to the carers centre so that the carers' needs are also met and considered. Or we will refer and try and request increase to packages of care if that's deemed necessary. We might also talk about if you need a fire safety check, and Rona will talk about that later on in more detail. Next slide, please.
So we advise on the management of falls, fatigue and behaviour, for example. Also too, we carry out rehabilitation, for example, cognitive, upper limb and sensory. And we also will refer somebody onto statutory and non-statutory services. So for example, social work, Red Cross. In Dundee, we have North East Sensory Services who address visual and hearing impairment, psychology, orthotics, wheelchair and seating services, and other allied health professionals. Next slide, please. We also work in partnership with some non-traditional services. For example, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We often do joint visit with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service to carry out home fire safety visits. During this visit, they might look at formulating a safety plan to enable the person to be safe in the event of a fire, so how they raise the alarm, how they would get out of the house basically if there's a fire. They also will install such things as smoke detectors, heat detectors, provide fire retardant blankets, bedding, and what I've found is that the joint work with the fire service, it's a specialist team that carries it out when we refer to people. So the relationships have developed strong relationships with the service. SSE, with them it's this priority service register. So this is you can register with this if you're in the SSE area. Set passwords. So for example, when somebody from SSE visits, you know the person is not a bogus caller because they know the password. Get advance notice of any interruptions to the service, and you have priority when there is a power cut. You can also arrange for communications from SSE to be sent to a nominated person. SGM, through the fire service actually, we got involved with SGM looking at gas cooker locking valves, and our department was one of the areas that was used as a pilot area. This is a valve that's fitted to the pipework of your cooker, the gas cooker, that can be locked and unlocked to allow the individual to use their cooker in a safe manner when somebody is present. I did try to embed a link for a recording that was made with our department for SGM and the gas cooker locking valves, but unfortunately I couldn't get it to work on this slide. But at the end of this presentation, we have useful websites and telephone numbers, and you can actually click on SGM website and find the link there. And I should say too, most importantly, that the 3 areas I've just spoken about, the services are free to the consumer. Next slide, please.
So to give you a rough idea with regard to falls, what we're looking at is round about 35% of people over the age of 65 will fall at least once a year. That's a lot. And 45% of those over 80 will also have a fall where they live at home. The WHO, the World Health Organization, Global Report on Falls Prevention in Older People states between 28 and 35% of over 65s will have a fall at least one a year, and 32%, 42% of over 70 will have a fall. These are incredible numbers and have huge impact. And what we see is as people age, the frequency of falls increases. Some of these falls could be quite, but some could be severe and have major implications for the rest of your life. Between 10 and 15% of all A&E visits are people who have fallen at home. So you can see that it's something that we can prevent, then it can make a huge impact. So what we try to do, next slide please. What we try to do, first of all, is help decrease that rate of falls. When somebody's fallen, it can be traumatic and they might lie for a long time before they get, and people are very, very falling again. And that fear can create a dependence. It can create a loss of autonomy. It can be linked in with confusion. Quite often people are going to the toilet in the middle of the night. They've got a urine infection. They are getting slightly muddy with that infection and they fall. That happens quite often. And it can also lead to depression. And all of that to increase your independence in daily living tasks. So we can show you some strategies for what to do when you fall. Everything from can you walk the floor, can you reach something to call, can you find a warm blanket or rub something to you so that you don't end up with hypothermia. But we also might teach you, if you can, to get your knee and then maybe lean up on something, pull yourself up. Or if you're really hurt, then perhaps stay still. But you need to call for help. Can you reach your phone? Have you got a mobile phone in your pocket? Or are you going to need something like a community alarm? And if you have lots of falls alarm tends to be a wrist bracelet that as you drop, activates and sends a signal to someone to call for help. The community alarm is where you have to press a button, and either it's on your wrist or a necklace. Now, each local authority area may have its own criteria for giving these, so you would be best to check the situation in your own area. For example, it might be after 3 falls, you can get a false alarm. Each area will differ. And then we've got to think about maybe how could we reposition furniture in the room. If you've got a coffee table of your living room, that can be an obstacle. If you just positioned it differently, you could create more floor space for you walking and less of a need to walk in a small space. You might only have about 6 inches walking space to get round your coffee table, but if you positioned it somewhere differently, you might not have that concern or worry. We also don't want you overreaching. So a usual example is if somebody's overreaching to close their curtains, and it might be that there's a table in front of the window between you and the curtain. Could that be moved elsewhere? Could you use a long grabber, a long reacher to fasten onto the edge of the curtain and move it round, so that the long reacher gives you that extra length without you having to stretch and lose your balance potentially. So we'll look at that layout, we'll look at how you do things within the house. And obviously it goes without saying, if you spill something, try and get it cleaned up as soon as possible. And again, like we said earlier about clutter, if you can avoid having too much that creates obstacles for you, then it's better that you have things neat and tidy or out of the way so that you have clear floor space for walking in. Next slide, please. So we might advise you to increase the amount of lighting in your home, because as we age, we require more lights, and quite a bit more light, up to about 50% more lighting than normal. And again, it sounds obvious, but we often forget to check your glasses are clean and maybe to go and get a regular check. It's quite easy to go, oh, I just had it last year, but actually maybe it's happened 2 years ago. Make sure it's regular that you get your vision checked. We also work with people who maybe for medical reasons don't perceive one side of their body. They don't see what's on the left-hand side. And they quite often do things like bump into doors or doorways, door frames, or trip over something on the left side because they're not seeing it. So we will teach people how to scan, how to look around using your eyes to scan the room to make sure you don't hit what will be a hazard. And one thing to bear in mind, if you're thinking about increasing your lighting, up lighters and down lighters, they look pretty, they look quite nice, but as we get older, what you might find, you realise, is they're creating shadows of darkness and light. And it almost is like a zebra crossing at times, depending where your lights are positioned, where it's light, dark, light, dark. So it's almost like a stroboscopic type appearance. So just be aware of your lighting and potentially the shades and the shadows they may cause. Next slide, please. How you use your hands is extremely important. And if you have medical conditions that make your hands not work as easily as normal, as you would normally expect to be able to use them, then what we can look at is how you use your hands and what we can use to improve your grip. And by grip, we mean things like a pincer grip, when you're pinching something. A cylinder grip is where you're holding something like a can. A span grip is where you maybe put your hands on the top of a jar lid to turn it. And think about a key grip, where it's the side of your finger and you hold the edge of the key and turn, and having a power grip, something in your fist. These are the different types of grip that we would look at, and we have different ways of working on your hand function. Linked to that would be if you don't have good sensation in your fingers, it's difficult then to grip. So we would also look at the sensory side of things. There are many different adaptations or tools that we could use. So, like, so at home, I have got an electric can opener. You do, if you have a look around on the internet, you can find electric jar openers that grip the jar and twist and turn at the press of one finger. So there are gadgets out there that will aid grip. So whether they are like rubber caps that go over the top of jars to make it easier to grip and turn, or whether it's just something that pads out the width of your pen to make it easier to hold a pen. And we'll also, in terms of, it's not so much grip, but in finger use, we use one finger all the time to dial up on the phone, to look at an iPad. So making sure we can isolate a finger and use it to hit a direct target. These are the kinds of things we can look at. Some of the small aids might include thicker cutlery, something that's easier to hold. But it might also be that you need a lever tap. If you're finding these crosshead taps difficult to grip, to turn on your tap, a change of style sometimes is the answer. Something small that can make a huge difference to yourself. And we can look at that and we can give you advice. Next slide, please.
So as occupational therapists, we advise on fatigue management and energy saving techniques. So what we say to people to do is to do tasks and activities when you have the energy to do them, but don't overdo things because you can pay for it the following day by being exceptionally tired or sore. Take time to think ahead and plan what you will do each day. Don't try and pack too much into your day. Set goals which you can meet during the week. And prioritise what is important to you. I quite often go in to see people who say what's important is for them to clean their kitchen, but actually not to dust their living room. So they will clean their kitchen and dusting becomes a task that's done on a later date. Next slide, please. We say to people to pace yourself, balancing rest and activity, and think about what matters to you. So, for example, to use the housework example again, if you're doing your housework, do over a few days. Take time, stop, have a cup of tea, read the paper, listen to the radio, watch television. We advise people to eat a healthy diet and to have a good quality of sleep. And Shona's going to speak a little bit more about sleep in the next slide. Next slide, please.
So sleep helps your body and mind to recover from illness. You've got to make sure that you sleep well enough and that you feel well enough after you wake. Not everybody needs 8 hours, it's a bit of a myth, but try and go to sleep at the same time each day. Some people ask us about a daytime nap. Some people require to do that because of a medical condition, and therefore they need to timetable that into their day. But be aware for some others, if they sleep during the day, it might affect their quality of nighttime sleep. The key to it is having your own routine. Next slide, please. So one of the obvious things is to think about the room you're sleeping in and making sure that your bed and your room are comfortable. If you're too cold, you will be paying attention to the open window, you'll freeze, you'll shake and shiver, but you might not get to sleep. So it's about thinking about your room temperature. For some people, the room's too hot and they need a window open, but you will know yourself what is best for you. But you need to have a bit of a routine before you go to your bed. So relaxing, allowing yourself time to unwind and calm your mind. You know, they're telling you not to have alcohol and caffeine prior to going to sleep because your mind might be racing. But if you can take time so that you're not looking at a blue screen, so things like your iPad or your phone while you're lying in your bed, put them to one side and allow yourself that time to unwind before you want to try and sleep. Some people like calming music. You will work out what is best for you. If you're active during the day, your sleep will have a genuine tiredness about it. So think about the activities you're doing and do as much as you can within your limits of your fatigue. Next slide, please. So part of that routine is, whoops, can we go back one? So making sure your bed and room are comfortable, making sure you relax before your bed, alcohol and caffeine, reduce that before going, and being active during the day. And pacing yourself, that's the thing I was meaning to add. Next slide, please.
So as occupational therapists, we work with people who suffer from anxiety and/or depression. When we work with people who suffer from these conditions, we jointly set realistic goals by breaking each task down into small steps. As occupational therapists, we call this activity analysis. So, for example, a person may wish their goal might be to shop independently for their food in a supermarket. But what we would do as occupational therapists is to break down that task. So it might be looking at making shopping lists, using public transport, how to locate items within the shop, how you handle money when paying for your goods, and also to how you converse with shop assistants. If we break a task down, it feels much more manageable. We jointly identify triggers that make the person feel stressed and look for ways to reduce or manage them. So, for example, to use the shopping example we used earlier, the person may become anxious when using the bus when it's busy. So what we might do is looking at using the bus when it's not so busy, but also to develop strategies for that person to use should the bus become busy while they're travelling on it. And we look at things like approaches like anxiety management. Next slide, please. We jointly identify what the person already does that helps them and make that part of their daily routine. So again, to use the example of the supermarket, the person might feel quite comfortable in using a familiar bus route. So it might be an option to use the supermarket or the shop that's on that bus route as a way of building up the person's confidence and self-esteem. And once we've worked with that part, using the shop at the end of that bus route, then we can maybe look at different shops and different bus routes to use. Pace yourself. Don't try to do too much. You can be overwhelmed if you feel there's a long road in front of you. And plan ahead. Use strategies to plan ahead, give plenty of time to carry out tasks and activities, and you'll feel more in control. Next slide, please. As occupational therapists, we offer advice on memory strategies. If a person has a diagnosis of dementia, the person may be or may have been involved in home-based memory rehabilitation. This is an occupational therapy early intervention for people living with dementia, and this programme was developed jointly with Alzheimer's Scotland. Types of hints and tips to help memory. We say to people to keep a routine. So meals are a good marker for the day: breakfast, lunch, tea and supper. Maybe carrying out your shopping on the same day every week. Maybe visitors visit on the same day every week. We advise people to keep active and engage in a variety of activities. And as occupational therapists, we often get asked what activities we recommend for people. We would say activities of daily living, so anything you do in your day. So for example, it could be washing dishes, dusting, walking the dog, sweeping up leaves outside your garden. Most importantly, stay connected with friends and family. And we know this is particularly difficult just now during lockdown and COVID, but I found that, for example, FaceTime, emails, letters, telephone can all help. And use strategies which are meaningful to you. So some people like to write information down. A good strategy that I often use is repeating people's names back when you get introduced to them. So, hello, my name is Rona. Hello, Rona, pleased to meet you. It helps to embed it. Also too, another tip that I like to use is to leave items where you will see them. So if I have to take something to my work, I will leave it beside my car keys and my house keys, which I have to take with myself to go to my work. And most importantly, relax. Don't try to overthink and remember things. I think we've all tried to remember, for example, somebody's name, and then later on in the evening, when you're carrying out a different task or activity, the name comes back to you. Next slide, please. We say to people to have a place for everything and everything in its place. So keep keys in a certain drawer or on hooks, where you keep your coat, different items, have them in the same place, and it's a place that means something to you. We say to people to use a calendar. I worked with a gentleman who, when he got up in the morning, he put a single line through the calendar, and when he went to his bed, he put a line, another diagonal line, which meant that his day had finished. Use a diary, make lists, write information down in a notebook. For example, important telephone numbers, information to tell family and friends when they call, and some people like to keep a note of the visitors to their home to remind them who has been to visit them. Next slide, please. We suggest to people to have a daily newspaper either delivered or to buy one, but what I would recommend is you dispose of it in the bin each night before you go to your bed. So when you're waking up the next day, you know that that newspaper relates to that day. Also, TV magazines are quite good, but again, I would recommend you turn it as you go to your bed to the following day, so that day when you wake up, that day TV is in front of you and it assists with prompting with the day and the date. We say to people to use electronic devices. Calendar clocks are very popular and certainly have come down vastly in price. Some people like computers or iPads and also mobile phones. We do have access to tracking devices, and this is for people who may not always be able to find their way back to their own home. But the use of tracking devices, before we would consider that consent, the person or the powers of attorney, if they're active, would have to consent to the tracking device being introduced to the person. Next slide, please. As we know, COVID has been a significant feature of 2020, and hints and tips for wellbeing during COVID times. We advise people to plan your day, so build in your structure. Your structure may not be there as it was prior to COVID. For example, attendance at daycare, friends visiting, even some services visiting. We say to people to save energy and set small goals for each day. Keep in touch with people on a regular basis, so family, friends, and even people of interest. So for example, some people have taken to Twitter or Instagram to follow maybe personalities, people of interest, or for example, museums or the news websites. Next slide, please. We advise people to eat regularly and keep hydrated, to do a little bit of exercise or activity every day. And if you feel anxious, try to relax. Find out what relaxes you. So as Shona said earlier, if you're going to sleep, it might be listening to relaxing music, it might be reading, it might be going for a short walk, or might be calling someone. And most importantly, do not avoid asking for help if you require it. You'll find there are people who want to help you. And again, make sure that you get enough sleep. Next slide, please.
So like Rona said earlier on, list of useful websites and contact numbers. There's a whole range, and although we only have the Alzheimer's Scotland phone number there, they also have the website with a whole wealth of information on it. Hourglass is the same. There's lots of information. So again, Rona was talking about the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and that gas locking valve for the cooker. These are your links that you can go to. They might not link through directly with this slide, but at least you've then got an address to look up or a phone number. Now, next slide, please. And you might be happy to know this is the last slide. So we've listed some more websites. NHS Inform is the website for Scotland for finding out about your health conditions, and it also has the guidance for what is happening with COVID. The next one down, I just wanted to highlight to you, ilda.scot. So it's www.ilda.scot. And this is the Independent Living Dundee and Angus website. And it has many pictures on it that will show you the types of equipment. So things that you might be able to either get yourselves or in your local area they may provide. And it might be for things for the bedroom. It might be a rail. It might be a commode to have in the bedroom. It might be something bigger. But the pictures are on there and it's very well laid out so that it's quick and easy to see what is available out there in the world. It might not be able to be all provided by your local authority, but at least you know the kinds of things that you might be able to look up for online yourselves. It also has a few video clips that were done during COVID times, and it will show you how to fit some of the more basic equipment and maybe how to get on and off things like your bed or the chair or the toilet. So I would recommend you have a look at that. We often get asked about what app can I use? And the apps that we would recommend are through the nhs.uk apps library website. So if you have a look at those, you might find a suitable app there. And there are many other things. I haven't mentioned everything that's on that list there. Mood Cafe, again, is very, very good. They're all good links. So I would encourage you, if you've got any queries or just wonder or want to explore finding out about something, have a look at those websites and hopefully they will give you the information you're requiring. So that's it. That's our talk for today. And I'll hand back now to Brian, who might be able to tell us some of the questions that have come in. Thank you.
Hello again, and thank you so much, Shona and Rona. I'm so sorry to people for the problems with the audio at the beginning. I worked out that there was a sort of a feedback between Rona and Shona. I think that was what's causing the issues, and I apologise to Rona for having to mute you sometimes, so apologise for that. And you're actually on mute at the moment in case any questions come up. So that's been absolutely fantastic, Shona and Rona, so thank you so much. It's been really good and interesting. We have one question about if anyone wants to submit a question during the course of while I'm talking, to submit any more questions, that's absolutely fine. And I think you did cover it a little bit, but one of the questions that came in beforehand was, can you outline when a referral is needed between to an OT rather than a physio, I guess? Are you able to kind of differentiate those two at all, please? And Rona, you're on mute, so I don't know which of you is going
to answer that. We are working in an integrated office. We have health and social work occupational therapists, but we also have the health rehabilitation physiotherapists. So if it's more to do with a balance or mobility issue, the referral would go to the physios. But if you're putting it in the context of some activity of daily living, the referral might also come to us. So you might find that we both are involved with someone, and that's fine. Or it might be that one professional is needed initially and then hands over to the next professional. So we actually work really, really closely, and literally we are feet apart from them. Well, in land of COVID, we're actually about 20 feet apart from them, but it's easy to keep that communication link open.
Great, thank you very much. That's great. I think that's the only question that I'm aware of. I've actually got a personal question, if that's okay. My mother's 95, she'll be 96 in February, and she never fails to amaze me in some of the adaptations that she comes up with herself. And I wondered, like, for example, she insists on using carrier bags. She has a house full of carrier bags, and she thinks they're really handy for just sort of picking things up, and she kind of puts them on the end of a stick and scoops things up with all these kind of adaptation. I just wondered if you come across any other interesting or kind of things you think to yourself, oh my God, I can't believe you're using that as an adaptation to help. But I guess in some ways, what people do behind their kind of closed doors, you don't know. But I'm sure you've got some stories of people who think, oh, I can't believe you're doing that. But I'm sure you've got stories of that. People using radiators to get up out the seat and things like that is always another classic one, isn't it?
Yeah. I think from our point of view, we do see people using carrier bags to carry things, but when they've attached it to the front of their Zimmer frame, then it can affect the balance of that frame. We would rather they didn't. Yes. And it may be more appropriate to use a kitchen trolley to put something on, but again, we wouldn't necessarily give that out to everyone, because if you've got a door threshold that sticks up between the kitchen and the living room or the bedroom, then you're at danger of spilling something. Yeah. So we've got to take care. But it might be that you can get the door thresholds altered to flatten them. I get the convenience of putting something in a bag, but it's got to be done safely. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's obviously the theme, isn't it? It's always got to be done safely, but you know what people do behind closed doors, as I say. So thank you. Just more questions coming in. I apologise, I missed them at the beginning. Are you aware of the Empower service in the 3 areas of Scotland? Don't know if that means anything to you guys. I'll be honest, I've heard of it. You, Rona, have you? Oh, you're still on mute, Rona.
Sorry. I'm aware of it, but it's SSE that we've done the work with. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Can you explain the role of OT within mental health services? I think you did cover it a little bit, but I don't know if you want to give any more information.
Well, our job is about, as we said, about empowering people, looking at people function on a daily basis, and how we can support people through a mental health condition or a memory problem to be as independent as possible in the activities of daily living, and safe as well, making sure people are safe. So yeah, hopefully that's been covered in the presentation. So. Absolutely, yeah, that's the same sort of idea, isn't it?
Is there a link to how to get to the After You Fall video? Was that on one of them? I think, Rona, you were talking about the link. Is that the link that you were talking about that you couldn't able to get on your slide?
No, the link that I was talking about was the gas locking valves from SGN.
Okay.
So it's also on YouTube, that link. So.
Okay, this one's called Get Up After You Fall video. Is there a link to that? I don't know if that makes...
I'm not aware of that. Maybe Shona is.
No, I haven't got a link for that. I'm quite sure if you put it into engine, then you would be able to find it there.
Okay, great.
I know we have a separate service, and they may well use it, but I don't.
Great, thank you very much. A message from Sheila. My mother furniture walks when she gets up and out of her seat, and my mum does the same. About how the room. What advice can you make? What advice can you give to make this happen less to people furniture walking? It's a common problem, isn't it?
It is. We see it all the time. The problem about that is the tendency to overreach, and if you overreach, then you're likely to compromise your balance, and then you're at a higher risk of falling. So it might be that people are doing that because they don't have the right walking equipment, and it might be that their balance isn't great. So we may well put a referral into the physiotherapist at that point to assess what's actually happening. It may be about where you have positioned something so that you hang onto a wall or a door or something to reach something else. So maybe by repositioning that thing, you would have less likelihood to hang onto a wall or door. One of my big concerns is where people sit on a toilet and reach out to the open door and pull on the handle of an open door, and it moves.
Yes.
And again, therefore, you're increasing your risk of falling. So perhaps in that instance, it might be some equipment or a grab rail around the toilet would stop that overreaching. And the other one is reaching again from the toilet, usually to a hot radiator, and we don't want burns. So again, perhaps they need some equipment or adaptation to improve the safety aspect of all of that.
Absolutely, yeah. You made me my hand, the thought of all that makes me cringe sometimes. This is a quite specific question, but in Glasgow, I would tend to refer to NHS GGC Falls team, but when should I refer into the OT service, I guess, instead? So when would you go to the Falls team? When would you go to the OT service?
You might end up doing both. In our area, Falls team is in a clinic. However, they're actually about to get some therapists and assistants out on the ambulances. So the nature of our Falls service is actually imminently about to change. So they've got a pilot study going on where the 999 call will come in, somebody's fallen, and the therapist will go out and see if it's something that can be resolved without having to admit them to hospital. And then if they're needing a bit follow-up practice, then they have a support worker that would be able to follow on from that. If it was more general aspects or they uncovered other information, then the referral may well come to us. But sometimes it comes to us first and then we would refer on.
Great, thank you very much. I think I know the answer to my next question, but I'm going to ask anyway. Is it better to be assessed for adaptations rather than seek solutions independently?
I would say we encourage people to self-manage where possible, but what you don't want is somebody to go to the expense of buying something that's inappropriate. We do get people that want to purchase something, want to do it themselves, but just want a bit of advice first. So we get referrals asking for, can somebody please advise me on, it might be buying a kitchen trolley, it might be something else within the home. So the therapist can go out and give the advice, and then the person's in a better place then to make their own purchase. But what we don't do is recommend an individual shop or supplier.
Absolutely, thank you. I think you might have covered this, but I'll again ask it. How would you get an OT involved with someone you're supporting?
With us, it's a direct referral. At the moment, the council phone number is, well, it used to be in the yellow pages. It's easily available online. Even if you can't remember that, if you phoned our main council phone number, the generic one, and just asked for an occupational therapist, they would put you right through. And we have got a single point of access for the rehabilitation occupational therapist and the social work department occupational therapist. So the one referral could come for both of us. At the moment, we don't have access to adaptations as an NHS therapist. So we might need both the council and the NHS therapist. So one for providing the adaptations and the other one for carrying out the rehab.
Okay. And I think this is the final question for the moment. Do occupational therapists provide equipment, and if so, what can they provide? What kinds of equipment could people be expected to pay for themselves, and where could they source it from? I think you may have covered some of that already, Shona.
Yeah, I think if you look at the ILDA website, that will give you a whole range of items that are out there that people can look at. Some of them, they might be able to go, yeah, I just need a jar opener. There's a style I like. Now I know what to go and ask for. And that makes it easy. Whether it's a more complex piece of equipment, you probably are better phoning in and requesting information or help or assistance or assessment. And it might be that it is something that is supplied by the local council. So the main thing is get advice, appropriate advice, and don't be conned by salesmen. Excuse me, they mean well, but they might not understand it in context of your medical condition. And excuse me, I'm about to cough.
That's quite right. I don't know, Rona, you have anything to add at all? Just as you're on mute, but just if there's anything else you want to add at all, Rona? I'm now going to put Shona on mute. I'm going to put Shona on mute and take Rona off mute.
Sorry about this. We have an open referral system to the community mental health team, but what we would also do is if somebody phones in to ask to be seen by ourselves, then we would also advise them on contact their GP to get up-to-date medical information. But as Shona says, we don't supply equipment directly just now, so we would have to do onward referral to the social work occupational therapists for that. Okay?
Great, thank you very much. And another question that just popped up. What would be the best household design improvement you'd ever like to see?
I like smart technology. So, for example, door sensors, technology that makes life easier for people. So, for example, using our Zoom meetings, lights that might dim automatically for people, baths that don't overflow, lots of different things. I like smart technology.
Yeah, I came across a device a while ago that you probably are well aware of it, and it's really for people with dementia who perhaps wander. And as soon as they open the front door, a recognised voice, maybe a family member says, "Hi, mum. You know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, and apparently it's been quite fit. I don't know if you come across those. Maybe I'm that old-fashioned. Maybe they've been going for years, but I've been kind of. That sounds like a really good device. And if that can work, then that's great, isn't it? It's the familiar voice apparently that works. If it had just a non-recognizable voice, it wouldn't work so much, but having a familiar voice seems to do the trick sometimes.
Sometimes people on my caseload phone family members to find out what time of day it is. So, for example, if it's 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the evening, and I spoke about the calendars, the clock calendars, they're very good because they actually say, for example, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. So they will tell you the actual time within the day. So, yeah, those are really helpful. And something as simple as that can stop a person from, calling family at odd hours of the day and night. So you can reassure the person.
Absolutely. We're about to run out of time. We have got a couple more questions I've just noticed. You mentioned NHS and the council OT routes. How does that fit in with integration? Obviously, with NHS and sort of support services integrating now. How does that fit in together?
I still have to refer directly to social work occupational therapists. I work in an integrated team with nurses, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, and obviously occupational therapy. But equipment-wise, I don't yet supply equipment for people in my caseload. I still have to do a referral to social work OT. So.
Great, thank you very much. And then someone's made a very good point about with purchasing adaptations, if the best way to safeguard it is really possibly through trading standards. I don't know the other sort of recommendations for just making sure that any adaptations that people buy make sure that they're safe and up to the purpose they're for, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I have had occasions where somebody has purchased a chair from a salesman who visited the door, and we did actually get in touch with trading standards because, with the person's permission for it then to be taken forward, because the chair was vastly inflated price and really wasn't fit for purpose. So trading standards can support people to take that further.
Okay, sorry, one more question popped up. Are you aware of ADAM, ADAM, an assessment tool which makes recommendations for TEC smart supports? I'm
not aware of it, but I don't know if Shona is.
And you're on mute, Shona, sorry. If you...
Yeah, something that's used in this. You were talking earlier there about what you wish in a house. I wish builders are building a house that the toilet door was wider. We find a lot of toilet doors are really narrow and it's difficult to get zimmers in and have enough turning space to get to the toilet, that kind of thing.
Good point. Right, I think that's us out of time. So Rona, I've actually muted you again, sorry, just to stop the echo. I can't thank you guys enough. It's been a really interesting sort of session. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for tuning in today, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And thank you to both our presenters. It's been amazing. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to kind of email me and I can pass it on. Am I right in thinking that I can send your presentation around? Would that be okay?
That'd be fine.
I'm fine, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. And just to remind you that we do have 2 more free webinars coming up for next week. One's on scams and financial scams, and the other one is on the role of a carer. So if you haven't signed up for those yet, please go to our website. Sounds very commercial, but if you go to our Eventbrite page, you can tune in and you can also kind of register for them. They're both about an hour each as well, and they're both for free. So thank you guys again. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you. Sorry for the earlier problems with audio, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you very much, people. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Bye.